72 Days Trapped in the Andes, the survival story of Nando Parrado. On October 13, 1972, a plane carrying a Uruguayan rugby team flew high above the Andes Mountains. Inside the aircraft, the atmosphere was lighthearted. Young players laughed, joked with friends, and dreamed about the matches waiting for them in Chile. Nobody on board could imagine that within a few hours, they would become part of one of the greatest survival stories in human history. Among the passengers was Nando Parrado, traveling with his mother and younger sister. For Nando, it was supposed to be an exciting trip, filled with sports, adventure, and memories. But as the plane entered dangerous weather conditions above the Andes, everything changed. The mountains disappeared behind thick clouds, turbulence shook the aircraft violently. Passengers who had been laughing moments earlier suddenly sat frozen in fear as the plane dropped unexpectedly through the sky. Then came the sound nobody on board would ever forget: metal tearing apart against rock. The aircraft slammed into the mountains. The impact was catastrophic. Parts of the plane broke away instantly, seats ripped loose, luggage and passengers were thrown violently across the cabin as the aircraft skidded across snow and ice before finally stopping high in the frozen Andes Mountains. The silence afterward felt unreal. Then came the screams. Survivors slowly pulled themselves from twisted metal, surrounded by endless snow-covered mountains stretching in every direction. Many passengers were already dead. Others were severely injured. The freezing wind cut through the wreckage, while survivors tried to understand what had happened. And then came the most terrifying realization of all. Nobody knew exactly where they were. At first, the survivors believed rescue teams would arrive quickly. They stayed near the wreckage, hoping to hear helicopters or search planes over. Days passed, then more days. The freezing mountain temperatures became unbearable. During nights, the cold grew so brutal that simply surviving until morning felt impossible. Food quickly ran out. There was almost nothing to eat except tiny scraps of chocolate, wine, and snacks found inside luggage. The survivors rationed every bite carefully, hoping rescue would come before starvation became deadly. But rescue never came. One day, survivors managed to hear a small radio from the wreckage. What they heard shattered every remaining hope. The official search effort had been called off. Authorities believed nobody could still be alive. The world had already given up on them. Imagine hearing that while trapped on a frozen mountain with no food, no proper clothing, and no way home. That moment broke many people emotionally. Some stopped speaking entirely. Others lost hope completely. So Nando made a decision that sounded impossible. He and another survivor, Roberto Canessa, would attempt to climb across the Andes Mountains themselves in search of help. They had no climbing equipment, no mountaineering experience, no proper winter clothing, and barely enough strength left to walk. But staying meant certain death. So the two men began climbing. Every step through the mountains drained energy their starving bodies barely had left. Snowstorms blasted freezing wind into their faces. The air grew thinner as they climbed higher. At night, temperatures became deadly. The mountains seemed endless, stretching farther every time they reached another peak. But Nando refused to stop. The two survivors continued walking through snow-covered peaks. Then finally, they saw something unbelievable in the distance: signs of civilization. For the first time in over 2Moving forward. Years later, people would call it a miracle. But miracles alone did not save them. Courage did, hope did, and the refusal to give up, even when the entire world already had.